Good afternoon and welcome to this session about accelerating data space creation in smart communities. I'm Roberto Di Bernardo from Engineering Informatica, and here I'm representing the Smart Cities Domain Committee of FIWARE. So the session, briefly introducing him, I will take you hand in hand through the session. I'm moderating the session for you. Cities, region, and territories are composed of complex ecosystem facing with the challenge that needs to be tackled, considering all the different voices and the different dimension. Social, environmental, and economic development are required. Different domains, different perspectives, different drives that insist in urban environment, and data has or can become an essential resource to hear the different voices from the different actors, both public and private, and bridging silos towards smarter living. This is the main focus of the session. The Commission is giving instruments for this process: European Digital Strategy, the European Data Strategy, the Excellence on Trust and AI. But the process also needs a bottom-up approach. For this reason, today we are having in this session a representative from the European Commission, in particular Unit C3 Technology for Smart Communities, City Network, SMEs, and high hubs. Now, I'm proud to introduce you to the keynote speaker, and then show you also the other speakers for the session. In particular, first, I'm honored to introduce you to Cristina Martinez from the European Commission. Background on science, philosophy, communication, and telematics. Started with the experience on United Nations working on IT. Then she moved the European Commission in 2002, focusing on ICT research and digital policies. And she took managerial responsibility since 2013 in various areas like mobility and smart living. Here I'm highlighting this because we are talking about smart living this session. I remind you that after lunch we are going to have a specific section on mobility. Sorry for giving this this message. And she is currently the Deputy Head of Unit for Technology for Smart Communities, Unit C3 in DG Connect. After Cristina, we are having a panel with speakers from the giving different perspective, briefly introducing all of them. Martin Briskov, that is Associate Professor at Aarhus University, Director of Center for Digital Transformation of Cities and Communities, and Chair of Open and Agile Smart Cities Initiative. Riccardo Vittorino from FIWARE, Head of Innovation since 2015. He is also Vice Chairman of two groups of ETSI and IoTI, and promotes practice in data interoperabilities and IoT. Remaining on the small and medium enterprise, we have Gorka Garcia, that is CEO of Purple Blob, having extensive experience in the field of cybersecurity, telematics, and platform development. Then we move to José Manuel Cabello, he's director of R&D project and the senior consultant innovation at Innovalia Group. He's also a technology evangelist within FIWARE Foundation and head of innovation in digital transformation of the Canary Island Digital Innovation Hub. Last but not least, Gonzalo Alfredo La Rosa, Executive Director at Instituto Ciudades del Futuro, is working since 20 years in public sector. He is a secretary of the study organization of Argentina Standardization Institute of Sustainable and Smart Cities and Community and Smart Tourism Destination. And he's the head of FIWARE High Hub in La Plaza, Argentina. So now I pass the floor to Cristina Martinez for the keynote speech. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Thank you. You said already everything in your introduction, so I don't know what else am I going to possibly add to this very good context setting. If you allow me, I will share my screen because I prepared a presentation which I think might be a little bit long considering the number of very prominent speakers we have today. So I will stick to the three messages that I have for you today. The first one is that there are a number of challenges ahead for creating a data space in the area of smart cities and communities. And I think that some challenges, I mean, they're all equal, but some challenges are more equal than others, if I can put it like this. And perhaps this is one of the issues that we can discuss with the other speakers. Another point is that we have a very precise idea of what the building blocks of the smart cities data space should be, and how the building blocks of our smart cities data space should interact with other building blocks provided by the digital program. So this will be my second message. And the third message is perhaps to say a few words about the ongoing call. I hope you can see my slides. Then let's start immediately with what I think is perhaps something we always tend to forget in those technical meetings, but digital has to have a purpose. I read an article yesterday where the author was very convincingly saying that perhaps we should not use digital transformation, but digital transmutation. Because when we talk about digital transformation, we still put digital in the center of the equation. And it shouldn't be perceived like this. It should be the tools for achieving a purpose. Everybody knows that I'm very concerned about both climate change and environmental issues, but these are not the only ones. What I will try to convey in my short introduction is that we always need to have in mind the big picture. And that is important because the choice of technologies you make, the choice of use cases you make will all shape the future of data sharing in Europe and will be, let's say, the basis upon which we will be able to scale up those solutions. And because we need to constitute more knowledge and we need to reinforce our capacity to sense the environment, to understand what's happening, and to anticipate issues like the ones you can see in the slide. I very much believe that the smart cities data space will be instrumental in addressing some of the climate and environmental objectives of the European Green Deal. The second point I wanted to mention, but you already mentioned the most important policy instruments that we have deployed in the first years of this commission is the European Digital Strategy, which is addressing a number of issues from trust and cybersecurity issues, because we're dealing with critical infrastructure in the area of smart cities, to artificial intelligence as the disruptive technologies that can, or maybe not, let's see, help us handle complexity and intersector and cross-sector issues. And the final one is the data strategy, which is, of course, the context upon which the data spaces have been developed. It states a number of data spaces that are important. It proposes new ones, like the smart cities one. And it says also in which conditions we should be able to exchange that data. So very knowledgeable about the fact that some closed data that is owned by the business sector or by the public sector, but has some privacy concerns related to it, are not shared so far. I think it's less than 12% of the data available that is shared today in the world. The communication came with this idea of having common data spaces at European level. It has stated sectors like industry, agriculture, energy, mobility, and so on and so forth. And then it said, but in order to start with these data spaces, member states should come up with the proposals of what we call important priority data sets that could start triggering this data exchange that we want to know. And for making sure that data flows pervasively across the sectors, but also across data spaces, the Commission is proposing to set up a technical infrastructure with a number of building blocks like age and also high computing infrastructure solutions, cloud infrastructure and services, AI on-demand platforms, and testing and experimentation facilities that should be developed in those different sectors for the purpose of playing with algorithms, testing solutions before they go into production, and so on and so forth. For this, we have the Digital Euro program that everybody knows, which will help us to roll out those European data spaces and fund a number of activities. The first work program was released last year, and we have currently the Sunrise Call opened until the end of February. Let me just give you one definition. I think it's important because it will probably trigger the discussions later on. What is a data space? We have an official definition. I will read it. It's an interoperable and secure environment where currently fragmented and dispersed data can be shared among those who become part of this data space based upon voluntary agreements and under certain conditions. So it's very clear that we're at the stage of discussing those conditions and discussing what are the voluntary agreements that we will all agree upon in order to create this data space. The challenges we see in the Commission for our specific data space is the openness issue. As I said, there are a lot of useful data that is owned by citizens or by businesses, but that need to be shared under certain conditions or to respect a number of legal principles, and that sometimes is making very complicated the effort of sharing knowledge. Another issue is the portability of services. It's still low. There are a number of very great applications, like, for instance, the carbon footprint application that is used in Finland, but we cannot use it in other member states because of the lack of interoperability between member states. Data information, such as, for example, personal information that is collected by the application, is an example of why it's a little bit more complicated to port services, and we want to address this. Interoperability is an issue at all levels, not only technical, but also semantic. Of course, there are barriers in languages, there are barriers in organizations, there are different understandings of the legal environment, and that is probably the, let's say, the graal. It's something we will never really resolve, but we need to spend some time, some effort, and some resources in addressing those issues that are absolutely indispensable to be resolved, should we want to create an open data space for a number of key use cases. Cross-sector data, of course, is adding yet another layer of complexity, not only because you need to access data coming from different sectors, which have different rules, different standardization discussions, but also you need to manage it in perhaps another era, or perhaps do it with linked data solutions. And that, again, is adding a layer of complexity. Finally, not to under-evaluate the problem of the business case behind all this. As I said, there are a number of agreements and conditions that need to be clarified because we want to create a single market for data. And so the questions of monetization of public value, protection of your rights is a very important one. The Living in EU initiative that probably this audience knows has come up with a number of principles which are very important in this discussion of creating the data spaces, because it is about creating the transformation of our societies with EU values. So we have a very specific understanding of what are the principles under which we could digitalize our identities, personal information, and other assets. And that European way of doing things comes up also with an agreement on how we are going to share and how we are going to make sure that those who use the technology are not locked in some solutions. So I'm introducing the MIMS that I'm sure my colleagues will present later on. But the MIMS is this value proposition, I would say, that the Living in EU Declaration and the community around it is making on a set of specifications that can support all the aspects of a local data ecosystem, from the management of the data to the collection of it, the geospatial information, the management of personal data, and the marketplace enablers that are necessary for manipulating all these data services. The smart communities platforms are not a very established definition of the ICT infrastructure in cities. We believe in the Commission that we should be able to propose solutions that every city in Europe, every community could implement independently or notwithstanding the level of digital transformation. And that is also very important to understand, because we will not be able from day one to equip every city with the APIs necessary to set up a local digital twin, for instance. So there might be steps that we will need to fulfill, and that steps come from also the digital program in ways of how do we support cities in their procurement effort, how do we support cities in their audit exercises of the IT infrastructure needed to move on to this more sophisticated digital platforms. So we have a response in the digital program for every layer of this platform. We're addressing the data issue, we're addressing interoperability issues at all levels, and we are looking also at the more sophisticated solutions, such as local digital twins that are using AI in order to model the data that would be made available through the data spaces. So our approach will cover most of these elements presented, and it is part of an ecosystem also of solutions that will be provided by other parts of the digital program. So bear with me, because this is not something that will stop here in this community. We will need to work with others. And then finally, a word about the long-term vision. As I said before, we believe very much that the digital twin is the next disruptive technology, that it is the type of technology that will help us to better anticipate what is going on, to sense the environment, the ecosystem better, and will help cities to start anticipating by modeling some real-time data and make scenarios and perhaps show them to their citizens, take decisions based on it. So this is really a disruptive technology, but to get there, we need data, we need strong data spaces, and in order to do so, there is a number of issues that we want to address first. The long-term vision, just to finish on this, is also that at some point we will be able to connect all these digital twins at the European level, to federate them, not integrate them, but share some of the models, share some of the data that are developed at the local level, to work collectively on bigger solutions, because as you know, climate change issues, for instance, don't stop at the coast of Spain or Greece, but they are pervasive. Two important messages I said today before giving you the dates of the call was one of the challenges. The second one is the key elements of the smart cities data space. Remember that this will be a critical infrastructure, because the data space will have to deal with energy data, with water information data, with traffic, mobility, so personal security issues will be dealt with. It's very important that we treat it as is. So let's not overlook the trust and security aspects of the design of this data space. Then look at the control of data. It has to be fully controlled by data holders, because this is part of the values of the Living in EU Declaration, and that requires a lot of new business models and new ways of dealing with it, and managing these assets is definitely a critical issue that we have not solved yet. Access under specific conditions, there is legislation in place, there are specific agreements that need to be made, and they have also to contemplate agreements that will be made at another layer, another level, which is the agreements that will be devised by the support center for all the data spaces. So we need compatibility here, and we need to discuss this well in advance. We want also to make sure that the data spaces eventually are interconnected at the EU level, as I said, and across data spaces. So again, another layer of difficulty, which requires ex ante alignment from the different communities, including this one. And finally, I said it already, but we will be sharing a common infrastructure elements. It's an advantage because you will not have to start building the middleware. You will not have to look for cloud solutions. There are a number of solutions that will be made available already, such as a number of standards, by the way, who come with those solutions. But nevertheless, that requires a little bit of alignment, while those let's say, centered support mechanisms are not yet in place. And that's perhaps a discussion that we could have together later on. Finally, I would like to present you with our intervention logic. So, as I said, the work program, the first work program was published last year. You've probably discovered what's in it. I want to show you again that we want to build this in stages. We fully understand that there are a number of issues that need to be resolved. This is why we have launched in the first call only a support action to support the constitution, the governance of this data space for smart communities, together with another support action that will act as a secretariat of the Living in EU initiative. And finally, there will be a CSA that will support and provide digital tools for engagement of citizens in the design of those solutions, for elaborating a number of use cases that are compatible with the work program objectives. In the second stage, there will be a deployment phase for our community. We want to accelerate the adoption and the launch of the data space by supporting a number of pilot projects, which will have to demonstrate and to validate the blueprint's decisions. And the pilot also will produce some data that will come and further nurture the constituted data space. Finally, there is also the attempt that we're preparing now to procure a number of local digital twin solutions. We call it a digital twin toolbox, and also a number of other services for communities who are not that much advanced, such as procurement tools, consultancy services, advisory services for those communities, and training sessions for any city and community who wants to prepare itself for this digital transformation. In the future, of course, we will have to scale up those solutions. We will have to integrate what is available. As I said, the long-term vision will be to join also, excuse me, other spaces like the European Green Deal one. Finally, the foundation requirements of the data space. As I mentioned before, the digital program will provide a number of solutions for all the data spaces. This is what you see in dark yellow here. So there is a reference architecture that will be proposed by a consortium together with some building blocks and toolboxes. They will also have to discuss, devise, and agree on the common standards and protocols. And I very much rely on the fact that these will be based on the main principles. And they will be providing data models, business models, and management strategies for the whole ecosystem of the data spaces. And that means that we need to have a bilateral, let's say, movement between the individual data spaces and this central support center, because our own community will have to define governance mechanisms, we'll have to define and identify priority data sets, we'll have to come up with a blueprint, decide on the common principles to share data in the area of smart cities. We'll have to identify use cases that are compatible and that could perhaps also bring added value to other data spaces, and propose a roadmap for this data space to join in the longer term the European Green Deal data space. So there are a number of interrelations and interdependencies that we don't have to overlook. That's my main message for today. With this, I close my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them either now or later during the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Really, really impressive presentation. A lot of action, a lot of instruments put by the European Commission. Now is time also to give the floor to the local community in order to take advantage of it. I found really interesting the point you addressed where you talked about, okay, it's a digital transformation, but this is more about transformation. So having a focus on the big picture, on the final purpose of what we are doing. This is interesting. You talked about sharing knowledge, sharing experience. You put down several challenges. One is, of course, interoperability. I will be back to you with a specific question during the panel, but I would move with this in mind to cities, in particular to a network of cities. So I'm asking to Martin that represent Open and Agile Smart Cities, in particular to talk more about the minimum interoperability mechanism that was already introduced by Christina, giving some more details, in particular how cities have been involved in this journey, and how you are finding I would say balancing between a top-down approach and bottom-up approach on this. Please.
Thank you, Roberto. Do you hear me well?
Yes.
Thanks.
Loud and clear.
Also for the invitation, and thank you, Christina, for this very good expose. It's interesting what you said about transmission. I think we can see the digital from different aspects. The first, of course, is a medium, right? I mean, between, of course, people, between organizations, between processes, and that is the essence of being a community or a city. That's, of course, that you connect people, right? But then we can also see it as a material that we need in order to build our societies, our organizations. Like, of course, we have the physical space. Now we are basically building our societies on digital ground and with digital materials. So we need to understand that. And of course, whoever is in charge of setting up good structures for its citizens need to understand that. And then we can see, of course, digital as technology, which are the bigger structures that create the platforms, the silicon, the everything. So we should not, I think, confuse the three. They're all important. And what's really important is what you say, Roberto, about what do let's say the lowest or the nearest level of government, what do they want to influence, and how do they want to influence? And I think for many, actually, they don't want to do anything. They would prefer that they could take the materials, that they could rely on providers, that they could set up the societies that the political level locally has chosen to do. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So we are so lucky that we have some communities and cities with more resource, who have a surplus to lend their voice and some time and some of their people to lean in to specifying what would it be nice if we could get from the market, what we could get from the technology side, so that not just the individual cities, but across, we could actually shape good services, shape good societies. So I think that's how I would, in the beginning, approach your answer. We rely on some people with some extra resource, and not necessarily the bigger cities. Sometimes it's the big cities. We know the names who have capacity to lean in. But we also see smaller ones. I mean, we have seen in this community, Saint-Quentin and others really leaning in from the beginning. So it's not a matter of size. I think it's also a matter of mentality. We have seen how many people sharing their time, their thoughts together. And I think this together, like you create in these days, a forum where we can have the discussion. This is really the key. So you mentioned, and maybe I will just make it short, around what the MIMs are and how they're developed. I think what you mentioned, Christina, about the Living EU, again, it's a forum where we can bring these forces together and have a conversation. So the big networks, the Eurocities and Enol and so on, that we can also have targeted conversations. So there's a group where we talk about the governance and legal. There's one where we talk about monitoring and measuring. And there's one where we talk about the technical specifications, which is, of course, closer to what we are discussing today. So I give you that as a starting point, Roberto, for, you could say, what the cities need. Well, they would like to be heard, and also they would like some of them individually to contribute. It's so great when we see that. Also, some of the national associations, they second people to this work. We just had our Swedish colleagues from OASK Sweden and the Swedish Association of Municipalities and Regions seconding a person to be working with the tech subgroup and developing the MIM on geospatial. So I think that's a really, really virtuous cycle we are seeing, just as an example.
Thanks a lot, Martin. I got from your message some important aspects. So hearing the voice, so the creation of forum, but also the importance of having these digital materials, as you said. And I think in the creation or in the availability of these digital materials, also other kind of actors are important. I'm talking, and here I'm thinking about the private entity. And in particular, if we want to look at the local ecosystem, I'm in particular thinking of the small and medium enterprise working in a territory. For this, I'm moving to the next speaker we have, so Riccardo Vittorino. And I would ask you, from an SME point of view, with challenges, looking at governance perspective, looking at also the business side perspective, which kind of challenges is an SME facing with?
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, everyone, for the kind invitation and for hosting this impressive event, and so far very useful in terms of insights and information from different players. Our perspective, so our SME, FIWARE, is developing software for smart cities, concretely an urban data platform, which is one of the initiatives from Living in EU, as Martin has mentioned. And if you recall from Christina's slides, the local data platforms that engage municipalities to create local digital twins. So my perspective is always on this sense, that our SME is developing this sort of solutions, working with public authorities, local governments, and developing software to engage data to engage digitalization. And our challenge mostly are not typically technical, because we are lucky enough to do research and development with state-of-the-art initiatives all across Europe. We are lucky enough to leverage on European funding to work together with different municipalities. But indeed, in order to make this align with our business model perspective, we really need to work together with cities within these initiatives on this co-creation process, because even if we have business models that are more agile and that are delivering things as a service with monthly fees, when we work with digital with public authorities, I mean, we have to comply with the procurement rules, with the restrictions from public acquisition. So we need to comply with all these processes, which can take a long time to handle, and sometimes becomes quite a challenge for small enterprises to strive and to survive in this ecosystem. But on our case, we have been lucky enough to being able to efficiently manage it. In terms of governance, we have been looking into working with cities and helping them decide what's their perspective on the data governance, on data management. If they are willing to be the data owner, the data controller, what is their role within not only specifically for GDPR, but taking that regulation into account. What is their their added value and what is their perspective on the data value chain. And that's the main challenge, not a technical one, because there are plenty of tools being developed. There's now funding to develop further for the data spaces. But I think in terms of strategy and positioning, to work with these public authorities is our main challenge. And I don't see it as a difficulty. I see that as an opportunity to do further research and deliver the results they look for and the ambition for.
Many thanks, Ricardo. And with your points in mind, I will move to Gorka, giving also his perspective from another SME. In particular, we are now considering another specific domain within the local territory. So we are moving from what we could say pure smart cities domain to moving towards a smart destination. So considering the wider concept of smart living. With this in mind, I would ask you, Gorka, which is in particular, I know that you are working with the government actor. So I'm asking you your vision concerning the cross-regional data sharing. And in particular, if you see that there is the need of a specific and additional enabler focusing on smart destination as a topic.
First of all, thank you for having me. We at Purple Blob are an SME that mainly focused on the integration and implementation of different technologies, and most of our clients come from the government. This kind of implementations normally have a wide variety of actors in them, wide variety of sensor manufacturers and different actors that we started to solve with FIWARE. Focusing on the smart destination field, a good example could be the region of Huesca, where we have been working on a project that mainly focused on the gathering of information from different sources. That could be internet news, newspapers, and social media, from a wide variety of topics that impact the tourism, such as sports, the adventure, or even the ecotourism that is people or from all the world looks for in the proper region of Huesca. And this kind of work with the government gives them the ability or the skill to identify relevant events. Like, for example, there is a pretty funny one that Richard Gere says that he likes the Russian cake, that it's a regional food in Huesca. And this kind of information is then combined with the sensor gathering data in a common data model. This model then is shared with the regional ecosystem of tourism agents like hotels and local guides in their community, by making a kind of public-private work groups where they share the data so they both can benefit from it. The regional agents, for example, can adapt their tourism-based businesses to what tourist visitors expect from Huesca, so they can get a better experience and provide a better experience to them. This kind of work provides both the regional agents and the visitors with the proper experience of the area, and allows the government to provide new policies around them, so they can all benefit from all the people from the same community benefit from it. Then they just repeat the step one, start analyzing again the data, the sensor data, what economic impact or even what social impact this kind of actions has had, and they just adapt all the ecosystem again. So I think it's a pretty good point of view of some regions that are starting to promote these kind of areas that can be benefit from the European data spaces definition. Also, as an answer to the second question, I'm pretty aligned with the vision from Ricardo, because technically and technologically we have all the tools to implement this kind of benefits and data spaces in these communities, but the main point comes from the proper government to share this kind of data with other regions. There is nowadays competitiveness between them that it's not good to the tourism sector from the tourist point of view, of course. So the regions can benefit from this data as the proper region itself is getting benefits from.
Perfect. Thanks, Gorka. It's interesting that you are talking about more or less a sort of feedback loop that is closed thanks to the sharing of data, moving to the top down, but also bottom up. So from the policy creation towards the implementation and be back on this. Now we would like to add another pieces to the puzzle, because we are now introducing the Digital Innovation Hub. So in this case, I would pass the floor to José Manuel concerning the Canary Island Digital Innovation Hub, in particular giving some more information about the use cases they are developing and the challenges they are facing with.
Thanks a lot, Roberto. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for this really nice event. So I think it's very appropriate. Turning data spaces into reality, I think it's the big challenge that we have already. All the entities who are involved in any sector or economic sector in this case. So I think it's really one of the big challenges that we have, and especially in the tourism sector. Today, we should be in Gran Canaria speaking about it in a physical event, but due to the situation and due to the data, we take an important decision to postpone the event to September, for example. That's a really example that what are happening about data nowadays. As Roberto mentioned, so we're speaking from the Canary Island. We are part of the Digital Innovation Hub located here, and we are part of the FIWARE Innovation Hub, but we are really focused on the smart destinations. So you know that the tourism is one of the big player of the economic ecosystem, not only in Europe, even in all part of the world. Part of Europe is considered the number one world tourism destination. So we have, of course, a lot of challenge in this sector, as Cristina and all the rest of the partners mentioned before. We are creating a lot of data. Just when a visitor decide to stand up from the bed and go to the Canary Island, for example. So taking into account that we are receiving here before the COVID-19, 16 million visitors. So if we imagine one person of these 16 million visitors creating data from the first time in the morning, so we're speaking about data just reviewing or maybe rating just from the devices, flight booking, once they arrive at destination, just in the airport, hotels, and rental car companies. So it's a lot of data. We can imagine the medium of data that we can get access there. So what is the main challenge now is, of course, how we can combine the different category of data, no? How we can combine these different silos of data that we can find. That, of course, will be helpful to improve the competitiveness of the smart destination and, of course, the smart cities. Don't forget that many of the tourist destinations here in Europe are important cities in these terms. Another important thing is that we find now these silos of data, as well as public and private, where we have a lot of important information, important data that give us the opportunity to take a good decision in terms of future trends, future strategies, etc. Of course, another important challenge that we are finding is the investment in infrastructure, not only from the public side, even for the private one, and of course, how we can provide a good ecosystem for this. Of course, so now we are speaking after many years about how we can arrange all this volume of data that we have been able to create with many technologies that we are developing every day of the initiative. And now we're discussing about it. Nowadays, we have already in the European Union a lot of initiatives like the International Data Space Association, the Open Data Association, and many important stakeholders are working on this way. One of the initiatives that we are developing here, for example, in the Canary Islands, is going together with the strategy of the European Commission, launched through the project Smart Tourism Destination, which main goal is to provide a mentoring program. This is not a funding program; it's a mentoring program to give to the tourist destination the opportunity to have an expert to help to arrange and create all these initiatives in terms of data sharing. I think it's a very good option, especially for all this community. They will define 50 tourist destinations around Europe in order to be the lighthouse tourist destination for the rest of Europe and especially for the world. And in this term, from FIWARE side, we are creating and contributing to this initiative launched by the European Commission through the E4Trust project. We define an experiment just from here in the Canary Islands with a group of companies in order to create a trustly ecosystem, a trustly framework for all those public and private entities in order to share data. I think it's the first step that we have to work, how we can create this ecosystem, because if I am at a hotel of a rental car company, how I can share data with an insurance company in order to know about the mode of driving of the German people, for example, and know how many kilometers are developing and running here around the island with the car. So there is a lot of key information that give us the opportunity to be a competitive destination. Together with this, this experiment is not only just defining here in the Canary Islands. We're working with other FIWARE Innovation Hub of the community, just for example, with our friend Gonzalo de la Rosa, just from the iHub in Argentina. The idea is to combine both challenges, to combine the problems that we find in the different regions, and how this first pilot and prototype can help us to develop this specific ecosystem to share data in a good way. So I think it's from our side the main points that we are defining. I think this kind of panels and events like this one can help us to have more information and to have a global overview about what are happening not only here in Europe, even in other parts of the world.
Thank you, Jose, for giving this perspective, and remaining in the smart destination part. Thank you also for already introducing Gonzalo in the discussion, because moving to Gonzalo, that is chairing the FIWARE iHubs also network. I would touch another point, because we are talking about initiative, instrument, etc., to implement what we could call it the European way of implementing data space, or to support local communities, to support smart living in a wider sense. But now I would like to, with Gonzalo, to see how this European way can be, let's say, taken outside Europe, and in particular in the experience is having in Latin America.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, FIWARE Foundation too, for preparing and talking about these data spaces. How say they even know into turning them into reality. What we are doing in Latin America always requires a little bit of effort. We are always looking to Europe. Because we need to push that people could be open to sharing data. And in the tourist sector, it is quite difficult too, because we have multiple stakeholders, as Josema described, and I list them very well. And some of those stakeholders are micro actors. There are some family or small-owned companies, and sometimes, especially here in Latin America, in informal conditions too. So, and we have also tourists themselves as small actors that use and share their data too. So convincing all these stakeholders requires a lot of effort to raise awareness and to evangelize them, and to promote the importance of digital transformation too, and sharing data in common and open collaborative spaces. It is huge important to talk about this in Latin America. However, in all destinations in which we work, we note the enormous interest of governments in discovering the advantages of the use of data for their own management, but also we discovered that there are some tourism providers and companies, and a lot of these small companies too, they want to discover the advantages of use the data, especially considering that the high digitalization of tourism or tourists that was deepened by the pandemic situation too, more than ever now. So everyone actually knows that data generates information for the virtual promotion of their destinations too. They all agree that what yesterday was just another way of manage their business, or another management tool, now is turning into a necessity for this sector. So our institute, Cities of the Future, is constantly working with European institutions like Segitur and Invatur in Spain, but also, of course, like FIWARE Foundation here in Europe, Asia, Africa, North and Latin America too. And we know perfectly well that this is the path for tourist development in environments that necessarily must be sustainable when we are talking about living. Yes, and what Christina showed us, that this liable environment we need to be built digitally and physically too. This in LATAM is very relevant due to the economic ups and downs that we have, and we are great natural tourist territory, and we need to take care of our environment too. And above all, because we have to ensure the tourist process promotion of social inclusion, considering that we are one of the most unequal regions of the world. So we are always looking for this definition of smart destinations and smart tourism from Europe, as Roberto was talking about. And here in Latin America, we have not only Latin America, but also in FIWARE Foundation, we have created a working group for smart destinations that is led by Alberto Abella. Maybe he's online on this session too. For the entire FIWARE community, I have companies, developers, evangelists, experts, all of us, all together designing the standards for these data structures that could be used by tourist destinations, with the aim that all the stakeholders could speak the same digital language, yes? And they can manage this data just to generate their own information and build these tourism data spaces. This is a great challenge, but we have no doubt we are going to achieve this. And I have seen in this session a lot of colleagues that are on this working group, and we invite all of you. And in this group, we define an Argentine destination as a pilot project, like Posadas, which is the capital of the province in which are located the Iguazu Falls. Most of you surely know them. And thanks to the contribution of the entire FIWARE community, in a few months, we're going to have the first data spaces and the first dashboards with the information for the public sector, but also for the public sector, all the stakeholders on the tourism, and we're going to have this initiative being rolled up. And in Brazil, we are working too with the support of Segitur, building the smart data model for all the country in a program coordinated by the Federal Ministry of Tourism. So it's a national initiative. And we have started in 10 pilot destinations, such as Rio de Janeiro, Curitiba, Salvador, Recife, Florianópolis, among others. And the goal is that this data structure should be used by all destinations, and in the future we will have standardized data generated by the destination and shared on common data spaces. So this is a huge challenge where we are going to use and to work on this FIWARE Smart Destination Data Model working group, also to analyze and to achieve this goal. So we are working so hard here in Latin America, and of course, as Josema told, we are trying to have some common initiatives with Canarias iHub, with another iHubs from FIWARE Foundations, using and co-creation and co-design these data spaces for tourism. So then we are going to share with all the FIWARE community these initiatives. We can use these data spaces and these data structures in destination in both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, surely.
Many thanks, Gonzalo, for this nice perspectives, this link. So I would take some keywords from all the presentation, all the speech, because we talked about trust and security. We talked about the sharing. So we talked about governance, legal aspect, etc. There are, of course, several barriers, there are also some opportunities to overcome these barriers. We could consider specific stimulus, like, for example, data monetization, or increase the awareness, the upskill of people involved. In particular, I'm talking about also the citizens themselves, etc. So now, if we had to provide a final message, giving a relevant aspect to be considered, or also if there are specific risks that nowadays are potentially underestimated, which one would you suggest or would you highlight? I would ask first to Cristina.
Thank you, Roberto. I agree with the colleagues in the panel that the technical tools are there, so this is not a technical challenge per se. I think the technicality will be more into the discussions preceding the agreements on what are the standards that we want to use, and that's why we want to support those discussions through our projects. I think that in the end, interoperability resolves only by having discussions with a large number of people, finding a common agreement on the best solutions, and then being quick on the market, because as I said before, we're very adamant on the necessity to do it the European way. So we want the supply side in Europe to be on the ball and to be very proactively proposing solutions that will meeting those objectives. My other issue would be, because you mentioned the word risk, is perhaps the interdependencies that I see between different projects in the digital program, and the need to reach out to the consortium that will be developing the supporting tools for all the data spaces. And I'll conclude with a question: how can the Commission help you on this? Let me know. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And I would move to also to Martin for giving his perspective.
Thank you. So while I agree that technology is not as such the main question, technology is also a problem, because we need to have the technologies to be sensitive to the diversity actually of the ways that we organize our lives. So essentially support the political and the individual power to decide. So while we need this kind of diversity, we also need some collective action against the climate changes, and we need to stand together because the world is falling apart politically in some senses. So I think the main point is to have these fora, which we talked about, and today is one very good opportunity, but then also to make concrete actions. And there, I think what the Commission is doing is incredibly helpful. And I'm also seeing, I mean, OASC is a global organization, of course, headquartered in Europe, but I'm also seeing, as we heard the colleague from Argentina mention, the world is listening. So I think to have these different levels of not just conversation, not just governance, but also action that can be linked, not completely, but in a minimal way, so that we at least have some core that we evolve together. That, I think, would be very strong, and it's in fact also what I'm seeing happening. So thanks for continuing this movement, which is in fact, I think, a very pragmatic one.
Thanks a lot, Martin. Then I would move to Ricardo, and to give some to provide some comment also from his side.
Thank you, Roberto, and thanks, Martin and Cristina, for the previous comments, which I fully agree with. And for me, I would like to send out that the innovation doesn't need to be linked to the solution itself. It can be linked to the process and the methodology we follow. So we can do similar things in a different way and innovate it that way. And the approach that we are now seeing for the data spaces and for all this strategy to make Europe a better place to live in, with thanks to the digital tools, I recommend that we do not forget about the strong risk of leaving someone behind. be them a specific region like rural areas, specific member states, specific cities, or even specific communities. And that's very, very dangerous, not just politically, but actually to implement wrongly the technology if we do not make it accessible and usable by everyone. So I will make sure, would like to stand out that data spaces should take that into account, and that the next steps we follow consider the whole community in every city and region. And hopefully that's achievable by all of us together. Thanks.
Thanks, Ricardo. Jorge, your last sentence.
Just thanks for having us here, and just from our point of view, I think that we need to reach the people and in these communities. With this, approach them with the right tools to foster this kind of public-private willingness to share their data, because we have proven that it's beneficial for them. So it's just a matter of reaching them with the right tools so they can understand how much benefits can they get from this kind of data spaces.
Many thanks. Jose Manuel?
So thanks, Roberto. So only just to finish the intervention is the importance again to make data real. That is one of the main challenges that we have, all the entities that we are working on the technologies. As Martin said, the technology is a problem as well. No, it's just itself as the problem. I think that we have already an important challenge, all the members, all the people who are working and participating in this event, not only the speaker, even the people who is participating as assistant, is how we can create awareness in all the stakeholders involved in the ecosystem. I think it's the most important things. So we are speaking about small SMEs. Remember that 98% of the economic ecosystem in Europe is formed by the SMEs. And I think it's very important to create awareness about the importance of the data that are managing every day, and how their data can be helpful for all other entities and companies. And especially in the education ecosystem, it's really important, because we can't forget all our students, all our universities that are really creating and developing the future generation in these terms. It's important to create awareness in this case of data sharing, data management. That's our point of view. I hope that we're running in the good way. We are working. I think we are doing very important advances in this sense, but we have an important challenge in the next future. Thanks a lot for the participation, and thanks a lot for inviting us to be here. And I hope to see you soon in future events, especially in the next FIWARE Summit in Gran Canaria.
Thank you, Jose. Now, Gonzalo, please.
Okay. Yes, thank you. We need political decision and collaboration, I think. Political decision because the public sector, not only local, but also regional and national ones, must lead these initiatives with standards, with funding, with platforms, interoperable platforms, and the construction of this architecture. And because the local governments are the ones that can manage to involve and empower citizens and companies too. And collaboration, as Josema said, of course, too, because it is essential to have each type of organization at the local level, not only local, but especially at the local level, like companies, SMEs, citizens and tourists, universities, local and global foundations, just like FIWARE, of course, businesses, groups, associations, all the stakeholders, and why not FIWARE hubs too, that should be the protagonists of this transformation, as Christina said, not only digital, but also this transformation that this world is involved in.
Thank you. Many thanks to all of you. Many thanks, Christina, for the availability. Many thanks for all the other speakers today. Some words are for sure about sharing knowledge, creating awareness, creating community, and in this sense, I do hope this session have supported you to create a more awareness, to start some new contact, and for sure, one role of the FIWARE Foundation, in particular, the Smart City Domain Committee, is also to put together all the different actors in the games to support the further development and our transformation. So many thanks for your participation again. And I invite you to also to join us in the afternoon at 3. We are going to look at another perspective of cities, in particular, looking at data space for mobility. Many thanks, and see you all soon, hopefully in person.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.